Hey everyone. Welcome to AfriHeart Stories, your go-to spot for African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop a comment. Now sit back and enjoy. The sky was overcast the day Elise Adeyemi walked through the rusting gates of Bright Days Orphanage. Clouds hung low like the weight in her chest, a dull, unspoken heaviness she carried every time she saw a mother holding her child. She told herself she was just there to volunteer just for the weekend. But deep down she knew her heart had other plans. "First time?" the orphanage coordinator, Mama Chinyere, asked, smiling gently as she wiped her hands on her wrapper. Elise nodded, adjusting her handbag. "Yes, I'm a teacher. I thought I could help with reading classes or something." "You'll help in ways you don't expect," Mama Chinyere replied cryptically. "Come, let me show you around." The compound was modest: peeling walls, plastic chairs, laughter echoing through halls lined with bunk beds and crayon drawings. Elise smiled at a group of girls braiding each other's hair. Then her gaze locked on three children sitting alone near a corner wall. The oldest, a boy with furrowed brows and a clenched jaw, sat with his arms folded like a fortress. Beside him, a timid girl drew invisible patterns on the dusty floor. The smallest child, pale and thin, had a visible scar snaking down his neck and a persistent cough that shook his tiny shoulders. "Who are they?" Elise asked softly. "That's Jamal. He's 10. Kemi is 8. And the little one, David, is 6. They've been here the longest." "No one wants them?" Elise asked, already knowing the answer. Mama Chinyere shook her head. "Jamal's been called a troublemaker. Kemi barely speaks. David has health issues. They come as a package. People want babies, not broken children." Elise felt something stir in her. A tenderness, a fear, a strange sense of recognition. She walked over cautiously, squatting near them. "Hi," she said, voice gentle. None of them responded. "Would you like to hear a story?" she asked, pulling a children's book from her bag. David blinked slowly. Kemi barely looked up. Jamal huffed and turned his face away. She sat anyway and began to read. Her voice rose and fell like a lullaby, her fingers animating the characters on the page. A few lines in, she noticed Kemi was listening. Her fingers had stopped moving. Then David leaned against her knee. Even Jamal glanced back just once when she made the dragon sneeze dramatically. That night Elise couldn't sleep. She lay awake replaying Jamal's scowl, Kemi's silence, David's hollow cough. She'd always believed love was enough, but now she realized love had to be chosen daily in the face of resistance, fear, and heartbreak. By morning she had made up her mind. "I want to foster them," Elise said the next day in Mama Chinyere's office. The older woman looked stunned. "All 3? "Yes." "Elise," she lowered her voice, "this is not charity. These are children with trauma. They will test you. Some days you will feel like you are failing." "I'm already failing," Elise whispered, eyes moist. "I've spent years begging God for children. Maybe this is his answer. Just not in the way I imagined." Mama Chinyere leaned back and sighed. "We'll start the paperwork. You'll need to pass background checks, attend classes, go through assessments. It'll take weeks." "I'm ready." Elise went through it all. Home inspections, psychological evaluations, training courses. Every night, she returned to Bright Days and read stories to the trio. Jamal still refused to speak to her. Kemi followed her silently. David held her hand like a lifeline. When the approval letter finally arrived 3 months later, Elise danced barefoot in her living room. She cooked jollof rice, cleaned the guest rooms, and wrote their names on sticky notes: Jamal, Kemi, David, taping them to the bedroom doors. The house suddenly felt alive. The day she brought them home was both magical and terrifying. Jamal stomped through the living room, kicking over a stool. Kemi stood frozen in the hallway for over an hour. David burst into a coughing fit and wet himself on the rug. Elise tried to stay calm. "It's okay," she whispered, holding David close. "We're safe here." But that night, after she tucked them into bed, she locked herself in the bathroom and sobbed. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the faucet. "What if I can't do this?" Outside, the hallway was quiet. But through the thin bathroom door, she heard it, a soft shuffle of footsteps and a tiny knock. "Elise?" It was David's voice, weak but clear. She wiped her tears and opened the door. The little boy stood there in his pajamas, holding his stuffed bear. "I don't like the dark," he said, eyes big. She knelt. "Neither do I." He reached for her hand. That night, she slept with all 3 of them in the living room, blankets on the floor, cartoons on mute, a silent promise made with every breath. The next morning Elise made pancakes. She burned the first batch. Kemi peeked out from behind the curtain. Jamal sniffed and muttered, "You're not my mum." "I know," Elise replied, placing the plate in front of him. "But I can be someone who stays." He didn't answer, but he didn't push the plate away. The neighbors, however, were less forgiving. "She's collecting troubled kids now," one muttered at the grocery store. "Elise couldn't have her own, so now she's trying to play savior," another said, loud enough for her to hear. Elise smiled through it, but inside it stung. At home she focused on small victories. Kemi let her braid her hair. David learned to say, "thank you," without prompting. Jamal asked for seconds. One night, after homework and cartoons, Elise brought out an old Polaroid camera. "Let's take a photo," she said. None of them smiled. Still, she clicked the shutter. Later she stuck the photo to the fridge. It was awkward, imperfect, and blurry. But it was the first image of their strange little family. And for Elise it was perfect. The first week was a storm of chaos. Jamal smashed a lamp the second day. Elise heard the crash from the kitchen and ran into the living room to find shards of glass across the floor and Jamal standing in the middle of it, unbothered. "Why?" she asked, breathless. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped over the mess and walked to his room, slamming the door shut. Kemi hadn't said a single word in 3 days. She'd begun hiding under her bed, clutching a stuffed elephant until her fingers turned red. Elise tried luring her out with storybooks and cookies. Nothing worked. David coughed constantly. The doctor said his lungs were damaged from past trauma. He needed medication daily, and Elise already had to take out a loan to cover the costs. One evening, Elise stood in the hallway staring at 3 closed doors. She had always imagined motherhood would be about bedtime stories, hugs, and helping with homework. But here she was, alone in a house full of pain. She locked herself in the bathroom again. Her hands trembled as she reached for the faucet. A sob escaped her lips. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "God, why did you choose me?" A soft knock startled her. "Elise?" It was Kemi. The first sound from her. Elise opened the door to find the girl holding the stuffed elephant, her eyes wide and scared. "I dropped my toy, under the bed," she whispered. Elise knelt down, took her hand and said, "Let's find it together." That night, Kemi slept in Elise's bed. The next morning, the neighbors' whispers became louder. "She's in over her head. Those kids are damaged goods. She should have adopted puppies instead." Elise ignored them. At the grocery store, an older woman leaned over to her and whispered, "Don't expect too much from them. Some kids are just too far gone." Elise looked her dead in the eye. Some adults too. When she got home, she found Jamal sitting on the porch steps, staring into nothing. She sat beside him. "You hate me, don't you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. "You can. It's okay. But I don't hate you." He kicked a pebble down the path. "Everyone leaves." "Well, I don't plan to." He scoffed. "That's what they all say." "I'm not they." He didn't look at her. But he didn't walk away either. That evening, Elise found a note on her pillow, written in messy handwriting. "Thanks for not shouting." No name. But she knew it was Jamal. A few weeks later, things began to shift, almost invisibly. Jamal, who once ignored her presence, now responded when she called his name. Sometimes he even muttered a gruff yes instead of silence. One morning, he entered the kitchen while Elise packed school lunch and muttered, "You forgot the orange juice yesterday." Elise raised a brow. "Didn't know you cared." "I didn't. Just saying." She smiled. Later that day, she found a crumpled paper in Kemi's backpack. It was a drawing, stick figures holding hands. Underneath it, Kemi had written in wobbly letters, "Family." Elise framed it and hung it on the wall. David began holding her hand at the hospital. He still didn't talk much, but when a nurse tried to touch him with cold hands, he buried his head in Elise's shoulder instead of pulling away. At night, Elise read them stories. Sometimes Jamal rolled his eyes. Other times she caught him peeking from his doorway. One night, her best friend Rita visited. "These kids are lucky," Rita said, sipping tea. "I'm the lucky one," Elise replied, tired but honest. Rita leaned closer. "But are you sure you're not giving too much to kids who may never give back?" Elise looked toward the hallway. Jamal's shoes were by the door. Kemi's sketchbook lay open on the floor. David's teddy was on the couch. "I'm not doing this for payback," she said. "I'm doing it because they're mine, even if they don't know it yet." At school, Jamal got into a fight. Elise was called to the principal's office, where Jamal sat with crossed arms and a bruised lip. "He punched a boy," the principal said, frowning. "Why?" Elise asked. The principal hesitated. "The boy mocked Kemi. Called her dumb." Said kids like her should have stayed in the orphanage. Elise's stomach twisted. She turned to Jamal. You defended your sister? She's not my sister, he snapped. I just didn't like the way he talked. But Elise saw the fire in his eyes. Later at home she sat Jamal down. You can't hit people, she began. He deserved it. Maybe. But there are better ways to protect someone. He looked away. You stood up for Kemi. That means something. Jamal stayed quiet. I'm proud of you, she added. His head snapped toward her. For hitting someone? For caring, she said simply. That night, while Elise drank tea, Jamal shuffled into the room. Mum, he said casually, where's the charger? Elise nearly dropped her cup. He didn't realize what he'd said. Or maybe he did. He found the charger and walked away like nothing had happened. Elise turned to the fridge and looked at the family photo. She whispered, we're getting there. The letter came on a Thursday. Fostering period ending soon. Children scheduled for split reassignment. Elise read the words over and over. Her fingers trembled. They want to separate them? She asked, stunned. Rita gasped. What does that even mean? They're going to assign them to different adoptive families. Or return them to the system separately. No. You have to fight this. Elise contacted child welfare immediately. I've bonded with them, she said firmly. You're only a foster parent, the agent replied. They need permanent placements. I want to adopt them. That's a long process, Miss Adeyemi. And expensive. Are you financially prepared? Elise swallowed. She thought of her savings. Her modest teacher salary. The loan for David's medicine. I'll find a way. She sold jewelry. Canceled her vacation plans. Tutored students after school. Hired a lawyer who believed in her case. Court day arrived. The courtroom buzzed. The social worker explained the logic behind separating the children. They will thrive better individually, she claimed. Elise rose. They are not parts to be rearranged, she said. They're siblings. They survived pain together. They've become a family, my family. The judge looked at the children. Do you want to stay with Miss Adeyemi? Kemi nodded. Jamal folded his arms but didn't deny it. Then David, who had never spoken publicly, stood and said, we belong to her. A hush fell over the courtroom. The judge smiled softly. Then that's where you'll stay. Tears streamed down Elise's cheeks. Kemi reached for her hand. Jamal rolled his eyes but smiled. David beamed. Later that day, Elise pasted new names on the fridge. Jamal Adeyemi. Kemi Adeyemi. David Adeyemi. Family. Finally. Elise held the official court papers in trembling hands. The names were there in bold print. Jamal Adeyemi. Kemi Adeyemi. David Adeyemi. Her children. Legally. Officially. Forever. She stared at the papers as if they were sacred texts. That night, she threw a small celebration. The living room was decorated with yellow balloons from the discount store. A cake with uneven frosting sat on the table. There was jollof rice, fried chicken, and malt drinks. Jamal eyed the setup and scoffed. This is so extra. You only get adopted once, Elise replied, grinning. David clapped as the cake was brought out. Kemi smiled shyly as Elise handed her a party hat. They gathered around the table and Elise lit 3 candles, one for each child. Make a wish, she said. I wish Jamal wasn't so annoying, Kemi whispered. I heard that. Jamal barked. David? Elise asked. He looked up at her and whispered, I already got my wish. Elise nearly dropped the lighter. She stared at him. What did you say? He giggled. You heard me. They blew out the candles together. Elise didn't make a wish, she didn't need to. Her dream was standing right in front of her. Later, she taped the adoption certificates to the fridge beside their blurry family photo. She looked at the 3 faces watching cartoons on the couch and whispered to herself, Welcome home, Adeyemis. The teenage years came like a thunderstorm, loud, sudden, and hard to navigate. Jamal turned 15 and started staying out late. He skipped school. Got into fights. Refused to talk unless he was angry. Kemi, now 13, became withdrawn. She erased all the drawings on her wall and obsessed over school grades. A single B made her cry for hours. David, frail but growing, developed worsening asthma. The hospital visits increased. Medications doubled. Elise took on tutoring jobs to pay the bills. One evening, after Jamal missed curfew for the 3rd time in a week, Elise waited up. He walked in at midnight. Where have you been? She demanded. Out. Out where? With people. Why do you care? Because I'm your mother. Jamal laughed bitterly. You're not my real mother. The silence after those words cut like glass. Elise stood still. I may not have birthed you, Jamal, but I've stayed. That has to mean something. He stormed off. Elise sat down and cried. Not because of the words, but because she knew Jamal was hurting and she couldn't reach him. Later that night, she sat by Kemi's door and heard her sobbing. Kemi? I'm tired, Kemi whispered. Of trying to be perfect. Elise opened the door and crawled onto the bed. You don't have to be perfect, my love. You just have to be you. They cried together until the sun peeked through the curtains. Miss Adeyemi, please come to the school. It's about Jamal. Elise dropped everything and raced to the school. The principal led her to a graffiti-covered wall behind the science block. In black spray paint, Jamal had written, Love doesn't fix you. Elise stared at it. Jamal sat nearby, arms folded, expression unreadable. The principal cleared his throat. This is serious vandalism. But we want to understand the why. I'll handle it, Elise said quietly. In the car she didn't speak. Jamal stared out the window. At home, Elise placed a bowl of food in front of him. He didn't touch it. She sat across from him. Do you really believe that? Jamal shrugged. Yeah. Love didn't fix my scars. Didn't fix my nightmares. Didn't fix Kemi or David. Love doesn't fix you, Elise said gently. But it stays. Even when you're broken. Jamal looked up slowly. Why, he asked. Because that's what real love does. He stood and left the table. She thought she'd failed again. But the next morning she found a clean wall. The graffiti gone. In its place, written in chalk. Love stays. Kemi collapsed during her end-of-term exams. Elise rushed to the school, heart in her throat. At the hospital, the diagnosis was shocking. Malnutrition, severe anxiety, and self-induced starvation. She's been hiding her food, the doctor explained. Pushing herself beyond healthy limits. Elise sat by Kemi's bedside, devastated. I should have noticed, she whispered, tears falling. Rita visited that night. You're doing your best, Elise. Don't blame yourself. But Elise couldn't help it. When Kemi woke, Elise held her hand. Why didn't you tell me? Kemi looked away. Because I wanted to be perfect for you. You chose us. I didn't want to mess it up. Elise hugged her, burying her face in Kemi's hair. You don't have to earn your place here, she said. It's already yours. Kemi cried silently. The recovery was long. Therapy. Nutritional plans. Emotional check-ins. Elise placed affirmations on Kemi's mirror. I am enough. I am loved. I am safe. And slowly Kemi began to believe them. David had always been the quiet one. But underneath the silence was a curious mind. At 17, he entered a regional science competition and stunned the judges with a project on eco-hydration systems for arid communities. His invention earned him first place. Elise sat in the front row, her hands shaking as he walked to the podium. He cleared his throat. I used to be a sickly kid who didn't speak. I thought I was invisible. But one woman saw me. She gave me medicine. And bedtime stories. She made me believe I wasn't broken. He looked at Elise. Mom, thank you. This trophy belongs to you. The entire hall stood and applauded. Elise sobbed openly. When they returned home, David placed the trophy beside the family photo. You're the reason I became someone, he said. Elise hugged him tight. No, David. You always were someone. You just needed someone to remind you. They sat on the couch, watching the old cartoon DVDs he used to love, the trophy glittering beside them like a quiet promise fulfilled. The morning was unusually quiet. Elise walked past Jamal's room and noticed the bed was neatly made. That alone was suspicious. She pushed the door open. The closet was empty. No sneakers under the bed. No backpack. Gone. Her heart dropped. A note lay folded on the pillow. She opened it slowly. I didn't know how to say goodbye. Or thank you. So I just left. I need to find out who I am outside this house. I'm not running away. I just want to prove that you raised a man who can stand alone. Love. Jamal. Elise sat on the bed, holding the letter like a fragile glass. Rita came over later and found her in the kitchen, boiling yam with an empty stare. He left, respectfully, Rita said. That's growth. I just wish I could have hugged him. Told him it's okay to go. He knows. That's why he could leave. Later that evening, Elise placed Jamal's note on the fridge beside his adoption certificate. And every morning after, she left his bedroom door slightly open, just in case. Elise received the call during lunch. Your daughter, Kemi Adeyemi, has been shortlisted for the National Poetry Finals. Elise screamed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. At the event weeks later, Kemi stood nervously backstage, gripping her poem like a lifeline. Elise adjusted her collar and squeezed her shoulder. "You've already won, baby girl." Kemi smiled. "You think they'll hear me? They'll hear your soul." On stage, Kemi looked out into the crowd. Her stutter hadn't made an appearance in months, but this was different. The announcer handed her the mic. She took a deep breath. "My poem is called The Woman Who Chose Me." The crowd hushed. I was silence in a noisy world, a skipped page in a perfect story. But she read me, again and again, until I became a poem worth telling. Her voice rang clear. She picked up broken things, not to fix them but to hold them. I'm not whole because I was repaired. I am whole because I was loved. The auditorium erupted in applause. Elise sobbed uncontrollably in the front row, pride bursting in every tear. Backstage, Kemi ran into her arms. "You heard me?" she asked. "Every word," Elise whispered. "Every beautiful word." Elise came home to silence. David had moved to university. Kemi was invited to an international poetry residency. Jamal was somewhere in Ghana doing street art projects. The house, once filled with noise, medicine bottles, laughter, and slammed doors, was now still. Elise stood in the kitchen staring at the fridge. The photos, letters, and certificates remained, but the air felt hollow. She walked to the bedrooms, made each bed, folded old drawings, cleaned without needing to. She paused by the window, hearing echoes of old fights, apologies, lullabies. One night, she sat with an old photo album. A picture of David in his science coat, Kemi with ribbons, Jamal holding up a spray can, pretending to be tough. She closed the album gently. "Did I do enough?" she whispered to no one. There was no answer. Only the clock ticking, and the quiet ache of motherhood's final stage, letting go. It was a rainy Saturday. Elise was reading by the window, wearing her favorite worn-out wrapper. Lightning cracked outside. Thunder followed. Then the knock. She opened the door slowly. Jamal stood there drenched. Behind him, Kemi holding flowers. David with a box of fufu. All three grinning. "You looked lonely," Jamal said. "We're home for the weekend." Kemi chirped. "Hope you still have rice," David added. Elise gasped, then cried, then laughed, all at once. They rushed inside, shaking off rain and throwing bags everywhere like they used to. The house filled again with footsteps and life. "I hope we didn't surprise you," Jamal said. "Best surprise of my life." They sat on the floor eating, telling stories, roasting each other like siblings do. Elise didn't even care that Jamal had left the fridge open. Later that night, Elise looked around at the sleeping faces on her living room floor. And her heart whispered, "This is the reward." The next morning, Kemi handed Elise a wrapped dress. "Wear this. No questions. Be ready in an hour." "Where are we going?" "No questions," David grinned. Elise got dressed. The car ride was filled with whispered conversations and suspicious glances. They stopped outside a new building in town. It had a big banner with bold letters. Adeyemi Foundation for Forgotten Children. Elise blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "What is this?" she asked. "Our thank you," Jamal said. "You started a foundation?" "We used our savings," Kemi explained. "My grant. David's prize money. Jamal's art exhibit. I even sold a few murals," Jamal added with a grin. "Apparently, people love stays painted on brick walls." Elise's hands trembled. "You built this for me?" "No," David said. "Because of you." They gave her a tour, dorms, a medical clinic, reading rooms, and a warm kitchen that smelled like home. Elise stood in the middle of the space, overwhelmed. Her voice cracked. "Why?" Kemi looked at her. "Because once you made 3 broken children feel like they mattered. Now we want to do the same for others." Elise fell to her knees, weeping, not from sadness, but from a fullness she never knew her heart could hold. Elise walked slowly through the halls of the Adeyemi Foundation. The walls were freshly painted in soft yellow, with hand-drawn murals of smiling children and words like, "You are loved," and "Belonging starts here." She opened a door labeled Wellness Clinic. Inside was a fully stocked room with inhalers, thermometers, and warm blankets. Her eyes filled with tears when she noticed a worn teddy bear on the shelf, identical to the one David used to carry. The next room had twin beds, colorful bedspreads, and storybooks lined up on handmade shelves. A woman in a nurse's uniform stepped forward. "Miss Adeyemi, it's an honor to meet you," she said. "Your children told us everything. This isn't just a foundation, it's a promise." Elise blinked. A promise? To never let any child feel unwanted again. The three of them, Jamal, Kemi, and David, stood proudly behind her. We wanted it to feel like the home you gave us, Kemi said. We even used your old pancake recipe in the kitchen menu, David added with a sheepish grin. Elise took a deep breath and sat on a small bench. I thought I'd never be a mother. Now you've made me, so much more. Jamal knelt beside her. You're the blueprint, Mum. Everything good in us started with you. She covered her mouth to stifle her sob. This is too much. It's not enough, Kemi whispered. But it's a start. Weeks after the foundation launched, Elise decided to return alone to the center. This time, not as a guest of honor but as a volunteer. She wore her old denim jacket, packed a box of books, and slipped into the classroom unnoticed. A small boy sat in the corner, head lowered. Beside him, a girl with uneven braids stared at the blackboard. Another child kept her arms folded, lips pressed tight. Elise's heart tugged. She pulled a chair forward and sat on the carpet. Once upon a time, she began, there was a teacher who thought she came to read stories. But she found her story instead. The room grew quiet. The defensive boy peeked at her from behind his arm. Do you like dragons? She asked him. He shrugged. Well, this dragon couldn't breathe fire because he was too afraid of hurting anyone. That made the boy lift his eyes. Elise smiled. After the session, a small girl tugged her sleeve. Are you the real Miss Adeyemi? I am. My brother said you only help special kids. Elise knelt down. He's right. But here's a secret. Every child is special. You just need someone to see it. That evening she called the kids to update them. Guess what, she said. I met 3 kids who reminded me of you. David chuckled. Let me guess, one was angry, one was scared, and one was sick? Exactly. Jamal laughed. Better stock up on jollof rice. Kemi whispered, sounds like you're about to do it all over again. Elise smiled. Maybe I am. It started with one article. A Mother to the Forgotten, the story of Elise Adeyemi. Written by a local journalist, it quickly went viral. The next week, Elise was invited to a morning show, where she nervously adjusted her head wrap under bright lights. We're here with the woman who's changing the lives of abandoned children across Lagos, the host said warmly. Tell us what started it all? Elise took a breath. Pain. I couldn't have children. But I could give love. And 3 little souls let me. She shared about Jamal's anger, Kemi's silence, David's illness. And now, they built me a foundation in return. It was never about what I gave. It was always about what they became. The host wiped a tear. You've changed the meaning of motherhood. In the weeks that followed, Elise was awarded the Humanitarian Medal of the Year and invited to speak at education conferences. But her favorite moment remained simple. One Sunday she made egusi soup and sat with all 3 of her kids, who had come home for a weekend visit. David told jokes. Jamal teased Kemi. Kemi rolled her eyes. Annalise, in the middle of it all, smiled. The world now knew her name. But for her, the best award was this, a kitchen filled with noise, memories, and the laughter of the kids who once had nothing, and gave everything. The power went out that night as it often did when the rain came heavy and fast. Elise lit 2 candles, carried her tea to the living room, and wrapped herself in an old wool blanket. The foundation had hosted a parenting workshop that afternoon and she was tired, but the good kind of tired. She reached for the old wooden box on the shelf beside the couch. It was scuffed at the corners, its brass clasp loose from years of opening and closing. Inside were things that didn't look like much to anyone else. Drawings from Kemi, a broken inhaler cap, a blue button from Jamal's first school shirt. And then, nestled near the bottom, was the letter. She had kept it all these years. The paper had softened at the folds like old linen. She opened it slowly as though it might tear from the weight of memory. If you keep me, I'll try to be good. But if you let me go, I'll understand. Jamal. He had written it when he was 10. The night before the court date. Before the judge decided whether Elise could officially adopt them. She hadn't known he had written it until weeks later, when she found it wedged in the corner of his old shoe. At the time, she had sat on the kitchen floor, letter in hand, weeping as if her body was breaking. Now, years later, those words still struck deep. She ran her fingers over the faded pencil strokes, remembering his small handwriting, gritty, cautious, trying to be grown when he was still very much a boy. The front door creaked. Elise, a familiar voice called softly. She turned, startled. Jamal? He stepped inside, dripping wet from the rain. I knocked. But I guess the bell's off. She stood quickly and crossed the room. What are you doing here? You didn't say you were coming. I needed to see you, he said. You could have called. I wanted to come in person. They stared at each other for a moment, the candlelight dancing between them. She noticed his eyes shift to the letter in her hand. Is that? Yes, she said, her voice cracking. I never let go of it. Jamal moved slowly toward her and sat down on the couch. Elise joined him. I don't remember writing it, he said. I do, she whispered. He exhaled long and slow. Sometimes I wonder if I ever thanked you properly. You don't have to. No, I do, he said. Back then, I didn't think anyone would choose me. I pushed and tested you because I wanted to believe you'd give up. But I didn't, she said, looking at him gently. He nodded. And that saved me. There was a long silence. Rain hit the windows like a soft drum. Then Jamal said, Can I read it? Elise handed the letter to him. He unfolded it slowly, eyebrows furrowed. His lips moved as he read. He smiled bitterly. I was so sure I wasn't worth keeping. You were wrong. I know, he said, folding it carefully. But you kept this? Every day since. Jamal looked at her. Do the others know? No, she said. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Proof that even if you didn't believe in yourself yet, part of you still wanted to be believed in. He swallowed hard and looked away. His throat tightened. Thank you for choosing me. I'd do it 1,000 times again, she said, wiping a tear. Even on the hardest days. He smiled. Remember when I broke that lamp on the first night? I thought I had adopted a hurricane. They laughed, really laughed. And when David wouldn't let go of that bear? He added. Elise's eyes sparkled. And Kemi hiding under the bed for days. She was so tiny, Jamal said. I still see you all that way sometimes. Jamal leaned back on the couch. I visited the dorms today. At the foundation. Met a boy named Tolu. He reminds me of me. Oh, she asked. He's angry. Distrustful. Keeps everyone at arm's length. Elise smiled. Then he's exactly where he needs to be. I told him he could try again tomorrow, Jamal added. That someone will stay even if he pushes. Elise's heart swelled. You said that? He nodded. You once said it to me. I didn't forget. A long silence passed between them, comforting, thick with understanding. Then Elise asked, So, are you staying the night? He chuckled. Only if you still have that old jollof rice recipe. I never stopped using it. They stood together and walked to the kitchen, candlelight leading the way. As the rice boiled and the peppers sizzled, Jamal looked around the home he once tried to escape from, and now felt drawn back to. Hey, Mum. She turned. Yes. I'm glad you never let me go. Elise walked over and hugged him tight, tears wetting his shirt. I never even thought about it, she whispered. Not once. The sun cast golden streaks across the windows of the Adeyemi Foundation. It was a peaceful Saturday, and Elise sat at her usual corner desk in the reading room, sorting through applications for new volunteers. She wore her favorite mustard-colored dress, the one Kemi always said made her look like sunshine. The building buzzed with soft activity. In the dining area, the cooks prepared rice and beans for the children. Down the hall, a staff member led a laughter-filled art class. And outside, a group of toddlers played hopscotch under the supervision of teenage mentors, graduates of the home who had once been children in its care. A light knock on the door pulled Elise from her papers. Come in, she said. A young woman stepped inside. Maybe 23. Petite, dark-skinned, hair in natural twists, wearing a simple blouse and jeans. She held the hand of a young boy, maybe 5, with wide, curious eyes. Elise smiled warmly. Hello, dear. How can I help you? The girl hesitated. I hope this isn't a bad time. Not at all. She stepped forward. My name is Zainab. I'm here because of you. Elise blinked. Me? Zainab nodded and reached into her purse, pulling out a folded newspaper clipping. It was yellowed at the edges. I was 12 when I read this article, she said. You were being honored for opening this place. Elise gently took the clipping, recognizing the photo instantly, her younger self standing between Jamal, Kemi, and David holding a plaque. My brother and I were in an orphanage back then. We were about to be separated. But the director read your story aloud to everyone during Sunday devotion. Zainab's voice trembled. He said, if one woman can fight for 3 children like this, then there's still hope. That same week, a visiting couple from the UK asked to adopt siblings. And we were chosen. Together. Elise's mouth dropped slightly, her hand fluttering to her chest. You're saying? This story helped keep you and your brother together? Zainab nodded. Your story saved us. It reminded people we were worth fighting for. The little boy beside her tugged her hand. This is my son Iola, Zainab said with a soft smile. He was born premature. They said he might not survive. But he did. Elise knelt down to the boy's level. Hello Iola. Do you like stories? He nodded. Good, she said. Because I know a few. Iola giggled. Zainab looked around the room. I've followed the Foundation's work for years. Today I just wanted to say thank you. In person. Elise stood slowly, her eyes misty. You don't know what this means to me. I think I do, Zainab replied gently. They sat together for a while, sharing stories. Zainab spoke about her adoptive parents, how they had moved back to Nigeria to open a school. Elise talked about Jamal's newest mural, Kemi's global poetry tours, and David's recent science publication. They all came from broken places, she said. But look at them now. They made something powerful from pain. Zainab squeezed her hand. So did you. Before she left, Zainab handed Elise a small envelope. I wrote something. For your wall of letters. Elise opened it later after the last child had gone to bed. To the woman who started 1,000 homes. You never met me as a child, but I met you, through your story, your love, your strength. You showed the world that broken children aren't burdens. They're futures waiting to bloom. My son will grow up knowing your name. Because of you, I wasn't just adopted, I was believed in. With love. Zainab and Iola. Elise pressed the letter to her heart. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from something deeper, something sacred. She walked out into the hall and pinned the letter on the legacy wall, beside Kemi's first drawing and David's science trophy photo. In the quiet, she whispered, then it was all worth it. Just then her phone buzzed. Jamal, coming home this weekend. Bringing someone to meet you. Kemi, don't freak out, I may have a publishing deal. David, Mum, they're naming a science lab after you. Can I say yes? Elise laughed aloud, heart swelling with joy. She replied to all of them in one message. Elise, whatever comes next, I'm already proud. Just come hungry. I'm making jollof. She stepped outside, watching the sunset splash pink and gold across the sky. Below, children were laughing, playing tag. The sound was like music. Healing. Proof. Her hands had once shaken as she opened her heart to 3 wounded kids. 15 years later, her open door had become a legacy. Not of blood, but of love. And love stayed. The end. Liked it? Thumbs up, subscribe, and join the AfriHeart fam. Your support fuels our stories. Until next time.